We're back. Welcome to the Blue Hour. It is the second week of November and the same week of OpenAI Dev Day. There's a lot of interesting things that were announced by our overlords at OpenAI. So we're going to mostly go through that and talk about how we feel about it and what we think it means for the future. So, Charlie, what is your overall takeaway? What did you think of Dev Day?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I think Sam Altman is a little bit of a robot. It like seems like a cyborg to me. Um, that's not new. He's seemed that way forever. Um, I just know he just looks so awkward. Looks like an awkward person, which is very endearing. So that was my take. Who's like, oh, this is distracting because this guy's awkward. The
He's
tech
definitely
though
not
is
like a motivational speaker, you know.
yeah.
He's not putting a lot of seasoning on it.
That's the thing is like I'm comparing it to like the first time I ever saw something like this. I remember were like the Apple announcements, the keynotes they used to do. I forget what they called them, but we used to stream them. And when I was in high school, I'd watch them. But Steve Jobs is such a presence, you know. He just like see so charismatic in comparison.
Yeah.
Um, Sam, it's like hard to know if he has emotions. But but no, it's cool. I thought it was great. Really, really interesting. The rollout, it's just amazing. The functionalities. I think that the this relates to things we've talked about endlessly, or the ability to have customized use cases for GPTs, like the context that you're able to provide it as like the I forget what the name of it is on the back end where you can provide it with the context, custom instructions. So instead of having, this allows for you effectively to have like multiple custom instructions, right? Build
Yeah.
GPTs for each of the different use cases that you have. So I think that's amazing. I think it just makes a lot of sense and is amazing. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah, and probably the biggest announcement out of it was that they're releasing something called GPTs. It's like a customized version of ChatGPT, and hypothetically, I'm assuming you have to pay for Plus to build it. It hasn't been talked a bunch about, but I'm 99% sure you have to subscribe to Plus, and then you can build your own GPT, which you can share. You can keep private, you can share with a link, or you can publicly publish it. And then in a few weeks, by the end of November, they claim they'll have a GPT store where you can go and discover other people's public GPTs, which is a very new concept. I think I mean, it's similar to the plugin store. They didn't mention it being in beta, so everybody who has ChatGPT Plus will get access to it when it's live, rather than having to turn it on in settings. But it's almost like the next evolution where you can have these custom use cases and then have your own version of the chat that's almost saved. If you use Slack or Discord or any of the, like, almost like iMessage too, where on the left hand side you can choose from your GPTs, it kind of changes the whole UX, which is wild.
Yeah, and yeah, when you go into the settings and beta features, plugins are still there and advanced data analytics is still there, but it doesn't say anything about GPTs. And it took a few days, took like 3 days for me to get access. Eric got access that day, Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah, like within an hour.
Oh wow, yeah,
I bribed
for
them.
me it happened midday today. Yeah, I had to wait. I refreshed the browser maybe 180 times, a lot of times the last few days. But they have a whole bunch that they made some as a team at OpenAI, and then Eric has created a few that I've now played with that are in my recently used. But the ones that they made are cool, and you can use them on your phone, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Which is new because you couldn't use plugins on your phone. One of the things that they said in their dev notes on the back end is that the GPT, I don't know if they said it's a store or not, but the GPT functionality will supersede the plugins functionality. So it's really, really interesting. They also spoke about revenue share, right? So like they have these free options from OpenAI, like Laundry Buddy. Ask me anything about stains, settings, sorting, and everything laundry. Sous Chef. I'll give you recipes based on the foods you love and ingredients you have. It's interesting. Math Mentor, all these different things. And then there will be probably ones from Khan Academy can bring one out that then has functionality and access to their API. Maybe I don't really know, but when it comes to revenue sharing and things like talk more about that and how you see this like plugins were a beta feature. I think that this is V2 of that that's
Yeah.
already in it's live, right? So
Yeah.
Pretty exciting, pretty
And
big
it is
change.
like they're rolled up into them. So they created something in each GPT called an action that has the exact, it's an external API call. It's the exact same thing as a plugin. It's just kind of rolled into your own custom GPT. So I see it being like plugins on steroids where, yes, there's like the Laundry Buddy and stuff like that is probably fun because the custom instructions, I'm assuming, give it a lot of guidance on how to respond based on laundry and being like,
Yeah,
bring
exactly.
everything back to laundry, use a humorous tone, which is cool, but there's definitely a limit on the amounts of those you can make and then how useful they are. Like, I could see myself using that once a month, maybe once and a half a month. But when you make these things that can call externally, like a Prompt Perfect or Zapier, they showed is making one where directly in there you can set up zaps and do and take actions directly through your GPT. And then the Canva one was very cool that they highlighted where you can basically say you want to make a graphic with this in it, and it'll create the graphic in the size for whatever you wanted with the text on there based on what you wanted, which is, yeah, Canva's killing it. Canva.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I use Canva a lot, and they had a plugin, but it didn't take this custom action where it actually put the text on the thing. It just gave you a bunch of templates. So this is a
Mhm.
cool next step for them. And I think we're going to see a bunch of cool use cases like that that go beyond just like a basic, almost like character bot and actually plugins that are doing a bunch of crazy stuff, which is
Yeah,
cool.
and like interacting with each other, which is cool. So then
Yeah.
with Zapiers, would they be able to, or Canvas, anybody's, would they be able to use Prompt Perfect within those GPTs, do you think? Would they have to would they be able to, I guess, on the back end, allow for people to be able to do that? And if they have the technical ability, is it automatically on or automatically off and they need to turn it on? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's not, it seems like it's a manual process to add new actions. You have to have some, there's like some authorization keys and client secrets and stuff. So I've been talking to other plugin developers, now GPT developers, over the past few days, but it seems like you can only add one action right now. And I don't know if that is a long-term, I'm assuming they would want people to add as many actions as possible because your GPTs can get kind of crazy. And I would
Mhm.
love for Prompt Perfect to be able to let all our customers use Prompt Perfect in their own GPTs. But as of right now, it's not as easy as just clicking it on. And I don't, hopefully, we get to a point. It doesn't seem like their biggest priority, though. And their docs are still a little bit, uh, like their documentation's a little ambiguous on it.
Yeah,
But it would
the
be
rollout was interesting.
wild. Yeah.
It would be. And the actual rollout from this ChatGPT 4 version that we had last week, and then the 4 point, the 4 turbo version that they announced on Monday, which has a larger context window and is able to therefore, like, as you have a long conversation with it, it remembers more of the conversation. You can think of the context window as like literally a window you look out of, and you're only able to see that amount outside. If you increase the size of that window dramatically, you're able to see a lot more and realize a lot more. And it's the context window is similar in that to that analogy, and so it's a much larger context window, which is fabulous. It also seems to be pretty fast, which is really fun. I only got access a few hours ago. I haven't been able to play with it too much,
Yeah.
but um, there were some buggy things like in the top left you weren't able to use plugins, like their plugins were gone, and with that writing on the blog post about it, super GPT superseding plugin store, there was a lot of interesting like not fanfare, but a lot of sort of chaos. A lot of people were like, oh my god, we are done, like, and a lot of really crazy emotions ensued for Monday, Tuesday. And then there were some maybe it was Monday that Logan from the DevRel team at OpenAI reached out, just wrote a tweet just saying, "Hey, it's just a bug. It's coming
Yeah.
back," and then it ultimately came back. And
Yes, there was a 3 hour window where they announced GPTs. The documentation said the plugin store was getting superseded. And then a portion of us got updated, this updated UI, which no longer had options for plugins. And so it was about 3.5 to 4 hours where people who had been running plugins constantly since like May. We're just like, it's so they're just gone now. Like, do we have to refund all our customers? And there, it took about 2.5 hours till OpenAI actually said anything, and it was interesting to very dog eat dog where people were making game time decisions, freaking the hell out. And luckily, by the end of the workday for me, everything was back to at least plugins were showing. I had a
Yeah.
mini heart attack, but
Yeah, it was fun. There's people. One person literally refunded all their customers without really thinking about what that means, or the fact that it might not be a permanent thing,
yeah,
which is I thought it incredibly surprising.
yeah.
Um, I'm not sure. I don't know. That was
Also,
truly the funniest thing I've ever heard. I hate to be so mean, but I thought that was really funny.
yeah. And it's kind of a knock on OpenAI there because they could have just emailed all plugin developers before at the same time of the announcement and said, "Hey, plugins can all transition to actions with the exact same users you have now," because that's the way it works. Like all prompt perfect users who pay will be able to transition that into our custom GPT, which is pretty smooth and seamless.
That's
But they
amazing.
sent an email to plugin developers and said, "Thanks for taking part in the
Beta.
beta plugin store. We will now be releasing GPTs, and we hope to see what you all build." And so that didn't give any
Oh,
information on the like, because plugins I think are at least around until the GPT store is released, if not longer, as a feature that you can integrate. So
hmm
it was a really, really bad communication on their part, and very, very bold decision on that guy to refund to everybody.
I know
That
it's so
is
funny.
that's a
Gosh,
mistake you make once, dude.
oh my, yeah. It's like it made me wonder. Like, has this person never run a business before? It's just like such a
Yeah,
rash decision to make. But it's worth noting that that day, despite all of the fanfare, people used prompt perfect a lot. Obviously, you know the usage statistics much better than I do. But then also we had 20-ish new subscribers that day, and it's been sustained each day, which we're used to seeing, and people were renewing. And so ultimately, from like a customer user perspective, everything was working, which is kind of
yeah.
funny.
Well, yeah, and there's like a lot of discussion. I guess a lot of people didn't like plugins or don't like plugins. So there's been a lot of back and forth of like, finally, there's something better in the plugin store. People still love plugins. The functionality is going straight into GPTs, which people seem excited about. From the late, like the issues OpenAI has had the last 2 days, I would say they haven't fully figured out the product yet. So it's still very, things are going to be the way they are, but the people who really dig in and enjoy it, you know, they love it. And so it'll be
Yeah, I
exciting
mean,
to
yeah,
see. Yeah.
some are more useful than others, right? I mean, like
Mhm.
at least to me. And then when it comes to, I guess you just said that people don't like plugins. Why don't people like plugins? What's the
I don't
biggest
know.
critique?
I saw a lot of, I think they're just insider tech people who like to shit talk on Twitter. We're just
Okay,
like,
yeah.
yeah, because I was very closely following the stuff on Monday. And there's just a subset of people who didn't like their experience they had with plugins. And part of that, I think, is plugins didn't work as well in the first month and a half as they should have, which
hmm
we might also see with GPTs. Like I asked our GPT to do something today and it just said, no, I can't do that, which it should have been able to do. It's like, I've never seen that before. So
Yeah,
all of these things have growing pains and people just did not, I guess they, you know, people really want things to live up to their expectations rather than go with the way things are and figure out how to use them to their best advantage.
that's okay.
Um,
That's interesting. I wasn't sure if
yeah,
there's anything like really that makes sense.
yeah.
Let's talk about the revenue sharing. Like, did we mentioned it, but let's talk about
Yeah.
what that
Yeah, it's a
means. And
big thing they mentioned, which was just like through it at the end. They're like, there will be a GPT store and we'll do revenue sharing for what we find to be the most useful and the most used GPTs, um, which is cool. There's a lot of companies that do revenue sharing and people, YouTube is one of the most notable ones where I think 40% of all ad revenue is shared by views based on, I guess, kind of the category of like, sometimes business videos have like a higher cost per view or whatever, but people make, full on businesses out of YouTube channels because of the revenue sharing from that. So they didn't give any information on how much revenue they'd share. We can kind of assume that they do. We heard months ago that they had 5 million plus users at $20 a month is like 100 million in revenue a month. That's probably grown, and you would assume with something like this, it might grow even more. But based on that, they have an option to, share millions of dollars of revenue with GPT creators solely based on usage, which is wild.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I think that this is a pretty interesting next step for them from plugins to GPTs, especially since they have the same. It sounds as though the building that you did for the plugin translates almost one to one, or maybe it is literally one to one into building a GPT, which is cool. And then it much easy. So it's not a beta feature, which is interesting, just in terms of like the actual ability to turn it on or turn it off, the way that plugins were a beta feature. That's so interesting. And then in addition to that, when it comes to the revenue sharing component, it allows for them to monetize on the plugin functionality, which they previously weren't doing.
Yeah.
Right? Is that the way that you would think about it? Or, are they taking less money because they're sharing it with people now?
Yeah. I, s-
Do you know what I mean?
that's a good question because I think the way I see it is they are giving a portion of revenue for GPT creators to get them more plus users. So there's like a built-in functionality where when you share your custom GPT to somebody who doesn't have a plus plan,
Mhm.
it immediately prompts them to sign up for a monthly plus subscription. So I
Got it.
can I'm assuming the way that it's set up and the only reason they're doing revenue sharing is to grow the amount of users that they have that are paying for plus and just
Yeah.
having now the question is are they giving enough revenue for people to actually care? Like
Yeah.
I don't know. If they're not, then it probably doesn't work, and then they're just giving away money for not much return, but
Yeah. The counter argument there is just, or the counterfactual is just that the first thing they led with was that there's 100 million users a week.
yeah.
So people are already using it. And it's not even that. I mean, it's really useful, but to have GPTs is like having it's it's like having custom chat GPT for different use cases, which is like
Yeah,
it just makes it better to me.
it does. And
It's
I
pretty
think they've
amazing.
had a hard time I guess they don't really do a lot of marketing, but they haven't had an easy time showing free users how much better Plus is with browsing, now with Dolly and Code Interpreter and plugins. They haven't been
Mhm.
able to show that really well, and I think their hope is now I mean, you don't have to turn on GPT, so you're automatically getting it out to, at minimum, like 5 times, if not 10 times the amount of people who are plus that didn't engage with plugins.
That's a good
And
point.
then, yeah, then everybody gets to share it. So there's going to be so much more linking to a way to get people to sign up. And if they
Yeah.
have, even if they have 10 million plus users, but 100 million weekly active, there's like 90% of their user base that aren't paying. And so I see it as them just trying to incrementally get that closer and closer to that 100 million. I mean, 100
Yeah.
million people paying yeah. Um,
I think that one of the things that you and I had spoke about it immediately afterwards. We spoke for hours that day. And then, but one of the things that stood out to me that wasn't really in line with like all the craziness that was happening, that really stood out to me though, was the enterprise play. They are really doubling down on the fact that they are a B2B company that has a consumer product that's completely secondhand to them. They don't, it's like this stepchild, but they have this enterprise play where they're working with massive organizations. And I used to do software sales to enterprise organizations. That is extremely lucrative, and it's a really good way for businesses to make money. And so
right.
they're really leaning into that. But their goal, when you go to their website, OpenAI.ai or whatever, OpenAI.com, it says front and center. It's a good reminder. Join us on the mission to build AGI. Like they're not in the business of like they have a nonprofit arm of the business, but they ultimately like as an organization, I think they're future proofing themselves by building custom GPTs effectively for enterprises very handholdedly, like very, very closely with those organizations. I'm sure it's extreme. I was looking at their job listings just to take a look at how that's changed. And yeah, they effectively are hiring a whole sales organization. It's really interesting. And in San
Yeah.
Francisco, London, everything's in person. Interesting to see that stuff. But that's very, very different from what it was a year ago or 4 years ago. Looking at that job board was only engineering, data engineering, very much technical heavy roles, and now there's a lot of more go to market stuff than there had been. There was really none for many years, and so that's a really interesting thing to see. Is that while a portion of this business is working toward AGI, another portion of the business is doing B2B enterprise sales, huge,
Yeah.
huge cost, I'm sure, because it's so unique, and their reputation is unparalleled. There are maybe 5 organizations you can mention in the AI space that are noteworthy, and that might just be because we're nerdy about it, right? Like Anthropic, Google, I guess would be included. Microsoft really just paid $10 billion for OpenAI's tech.
Yeah.
Um,
Microsoft is just
yeah,
OpenAI.
exactly. I know it's easy to. And then if you ask Bing, I'm sure I've said that, but if you ask Bing whether or not it's OpenAI, it doesn't tell you that it is,
No.
which I thought was interesting. But yeah, I thought, and then they have this third thing, which is just direct to consumer, and so it feels like they're just so not focused on it at all. But it's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, they're making a lot of cashish.
Yeah.
$100 million of revenue a month is nothing to sleep on.
Oh
Which,
my gosh.
yeah, I mean, if all their weekly active users paid, they'd make like 2 billion a month, which is
Yeah.
crazy.
Just based
So
on the fact that I know people who, all right, we get these people who say they can't pay 350 a month. It's very unlikely that everybody who's using ChatGPT could afford $20 a month. But
yeah,
I know what you
I know it's
mean.
crazy, man. I think it's as far as the GPTs go. Well, yeah, the enterprise stuff is crazy. I think it's $2 to $3 million is their starting price for that. They put
Yeah.
in, yeah, in their
When
docs,
you go
which
to sign up, like the onboarding flow is like you have to check a box at the bottom that says, "I'm willing to spend $2 to $3 million on this."
that
Yeah,
is
it was very funny.
expensive.
Yeah, there's some great comments on that tweet. It was like it's the most expensive checkbox I've ever seen. Like things like that. It's so funny. Loved it.
Yeah, it's an interesting play. They definitely it is weird to split the business that way, but
Right? Yeah, it's
yeah,
so interesting. The last thing, yeah, last thing I'll say about all of that. I think the takeaway from me after Dev Day was incredibly exciting, truly amazing. Some of the best product demos I've ever seen at something like that. It's mostly hardware for Apple. And so it's fun and it's exciting. I remember when the Apple Watch came out, for example, and then these new designs with different laptops and things, the lightning port and all that stuff's interesting and fun. And they certainly make you feel as though it's really important. Whereas this was like a really, really, they did live demos of GPTs building things that are unlike, I think that's also something people really slept on is how incredible this is. It's
yeah,
really, truly world changing just by virtue of the fact that everything's interoperable and it's also
yeah,
multimodal. So I'm on my phone today, and I was just thinking, I was like, oh, it'd be cool to have a new. I've got photos as my background. I was like, oh, maybe I'll like get Dali to create me a wave. So I asked in ChatGPT, could you create me just a new chat? Just opened a new chat, so you're able to use Dali within any of these chats now, which is amazing. And also the data analyst, all these different things are now interoperable within one chat window, which is incredible. And so I'm asking it, it's prompt, and I'm creating images for my phone.
yeah.
It's just amazing. Yeah, I don't know. I feel as though what I said sounded very, very grand, and I'm maybe not giving good enough examples. But I really do feel
No, it's pretty
sure that
huge.
it's incredibly, yeah,
We've seen these like back
yeah, it's
and
crazy.
forths of companies, mainly OpenAI, Microsoft, and Google, going back and forth, and even Claude with Anthropic a little bit, like trying to up the game on what it is. And OpenAI just released, multimodal. They do text to speech. You have a voice assistant you can talk to in the app. It can run code and something. You can upload images. You can upload. You might even be. I uploaded a GIF today, which was wild.
Oh
I
no
haven't
way.
tried a video yet. There's a wild amount of things you can do with it, and it's getting faster, cheaper. I think it's by far the best reasoning engine as far as being able to solve problems for you. And now I mean, I don't see as many people building on any of these other AI platforms. Like
I don't know how
Google,
easy it is. Like Bard, like I don't. There's no opportunity, it seems, to build on like build a plugin on top of it, right? I
yeah.
mean,
If there
also
is,
the
they're
Google
they're
App
not
Store
really
sucks.
advertising it. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you go to like the App Store in Chrome, and it's just like the worst. It's like the worst
Yeah.
5 minutes of my month. You don't have to do that. It's just like such a terrible UX. I just don't like it.
Yeah.
Um, Also, Grok came out from Twitter since the last
Oh,
time
I
we
forgot
spoke.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny. I saw as a golfer, I don't know if anybody golfs who watches this other than my brother, which is going to be funny, but there was a GIF, or sorry, a meme that Elon had put out of Tiger Woods as ChatGPT. Elon Musk did this. Grok is Twitter's large language model chatbot. So it's humorous. It's inherently humorous, and it's really sarcastic and funny. Really, it's like the only I've never used it. I don't pay. Oh, do you use it because you pay for Plus? You have access, right?
You have to update. I have basic Twitter premium or X premium. You have to update to a higher version to get access to it,
Oh,
which,
okay,
yeah. I like to keep my LLM playing around to a very focused amount so I don't get too sidetracked.
true.
Um,
That's
so
true.
I've not yet played with it.
So it's like it's a very different use case. It's very different. I think it's supposed to. Is your impression that it's really just supposed like the data set that it uses is Twitter effectively, like the
Yeah,
just
it has
all tweets and
up-to-date
posts?
access on tweets.
Okay,
So you can ask about things happening, and I guess it pulls information from Twitter, which is somewhat interesting because as things
really,
happen, like it's like a almost a 24-hour newsroom Twitter.
that's
So
amazing. Yeah,
yeah, it does give you some cool things there. And they released a version of suggested posts, which means on most Twitter posts, you can click suggested posts and it'll show you similar ones. And I saw some talk about how that meant that they built a database of all their tweets, like a vector database. So there's interesting stuff they can do with it, but I don't know if I really need a humorous chatbot right now.
yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm 100% with you. But the meme that Elon had put out, so the CEO of Twitter, they announced Grok the day before on Sunday,
Yeah.
the day before Dev Day. Yeah, on Sunday. But the meme he put out was Tiger Woods' ChatGPT and John Daly, who's like he's like this big guy with a big beard. He's always dressed in crazy patterns, and he's so unconventional for the game of golf. But he was truly one of the best of his time, and he won a lot of really really big tournaments. Dressed completely different from everybody else, smoking cigarettes, like taking swings with cigarettes in his mouth, like very unconventional swings like a gorilla, which is typically not the way that professionals play because they're so focused on repetition. John Daly's like owns 50 Hooters franchises, and like he's just like a party animal who's like so funny and cool, kind of like the anti-hero of golf. And Tiger Woods is like the hero of golf, the greatest of all time. And so there was a meme of John Daly in the background smoking a cig and Tiger Woods talking to him, and Tiger's ChatGPT and John Daly is Grok. Oh my god, I saved the meme. I was like, I don't know who I'm gonna share this with, but this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. And
That is a fringe. That is a fringe
and
meme
Elon
right
put it out. Elon put
there.
it out. That was the best part. Oh my
That's
god! I was like,
great.
this probably is not going to work very well for all of the Twitter users because it's so random, but it tickled me.
Oh, yeah, that's funny,
Yeah,
man. It'll be yeah. We'll see where they go with it. I mean, Elon definitely has a bearing on what is good in AI. Like he's not dumb about
definitely,
it. I mean, he's one of the co-founders of OpenAI, so
exactly. Yeah,
see what they bring.
um, yeah, it's cool. I think it's all about the data set, right? It's all about the data set, and for Twitter, they have a very unique data set. So I think that there's value in that if that's what you're into.
Yeah,
Tell me more about the API. I know that you had mentioned that was something
yeah.
all during the presentation. I sort of I listened to that portion, but it meant a lot less to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff they released that hadn't been released earlier. GPT-4 Turbo is the biggest one. It's a cheaper, faster version of their GPT-4 API, which is what Plus is built on, and now they're going to use in Plus, which means that you can build for less. It's like 3 to 4 times less. It's still pretty expensive. I wouldn't use it for anything that has a lot of like, we on average can hit like 1 million tokens used a day, which at the price it is could be like $1,000 a day.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's just we'd have to charge way more. Um, so we're not going to be building on it, but it's cool. It's a step in the right direction for people to build big apps on it. They increased the rate limits so you can do more requests per minute uh, on all of their APIs, which means basically they're getting better at making a platform that people can build big apps on. And I think they kind of needed that with GPT, with the new GPT thing. They also released something called the Assistance API. So you can build assistive AI apps that do a lot of things. It's almost people are calling it like an agent API because it can do more than just call the LLM. It can go and do stuff like plugins and functions. And I haven't played around with it nor had the time to really look into it, but it seems like that the way that they showed it off at the keynote was very cool. They built an app with it that does a lot more than just a regular chatbot, and
Mhm.
they're enabling people to do that to build their own apps with that, which is very cool.
Yeah.
They also rolled out all of their multimodal capabilities on the API. So, like Dolly, text to speech, and those voice models that they have, like the four voices, you can now
Mhm.
use with the API, which is wild, and vision as well. So, you can upload images to the API and prompt them. And people are going to be building a bunch of wild shit with that. I've already kind of seen it. Um, but it'll be an interesting like 6 months from now to see what apps have been built with these new features because you could do a lot of different stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's exciting. I'm interested to see as well. Somebody had asked us, do you think that this will be a sort of gold rush in the same way that the App Store was for Apple on iPhones? And what's your impression of that?
Um, Gold Rush, I don't know how much money there really is in the revenue sharing. If it's big, yes. If it's big, I think you're going to see, like 100,000 people all trying to build very popular GPTs, or, tens of thousands of people if they know that they could make, oh, what, 5 to 6 figures a month based on usage. Like, I think you would see a crazy amount of people trying to build them and like little, almost uh, like people popping up organizations where they just try and get together and build a bunch of these that do well. Um,
Hmm.
and you can still, the way that you charge with plugins, you can charge for these. I don't know if people will be are as tuned into that yet as they could be because they're, the model we have is you can use it X amount of times a month for free, and then to get unlimited, you pay. Like people could do that, but with plugins, we didn't see a lot of. We saw maybe 1,000 plugins built. I think the way that this is easier to build and out to more people means we'll probably see tens of thousands of them built. I don't know how many people are actually going to build differentiated ones though. And I
Yeah,
think that's where the gold is probably like building a
exactly.
really good product that does something that other GPTs don't, that is useful to people, that then gets a lot of traction and a lot of users, and you monetize that. But I don't know if enough people are clued in right now. So,
Yeah, it is really simple to make them. And when you go into ChatGPT now as a Plus user, and you have the ability to create your own GPTs, and the creation of them couldn't be any more simple. It really is just using natural language to explain what it is that you'd like to accomplish based on the questions that it's asking you, and it couldn't it there's no code at all, and it seems like it almost couldn't be easier.
yeah. And there's a few, some of the learnings I've had is, and I played around with making it just from that kind of the natural language way they do. It's going to be beneficial to get good at configuring parts of it manually. Like I think it'll get you 90% of the way there, but there's certain tweaks where you can go in and change almost the custom instructions. There's
Mhm.
there's some things that the model doesn't necessarily, or maybe people just need to give it as much context and detail as possible is the key. But digging in there, you can do things that you can make changes that make it a lot better that you're not going to naturally be able to do. You'll have to know kind of how it works, or at least how custom instructions work to get the most out of it,
Cool. That's
which would be
interesting.
fun. Yeah.
Cool. What else is there? What else should we chat about?
I mean, I think we covered a lot of OpenAI, and I
Yeah, we
did get
did.
this new sweatshirt, which is toasty.
Yes.
So I figure maybe it's time for toasty takes if you got one.
I thought that the hot take was kind of used earlier when it's like we talked a lot about this. I think that people were way too emotional. Like people were tweeting about how their business is now done. And then the announcement came out
Yeah.
that plugins aren't dead and they delete the tweets and there's no
Yeah.
ownership. It's like, gee, what a bunch of cowards. Like, I don't know. Just so like, I don't know. I'm not sure. So I think
Yeah.
that my hot take relates to that somehow.
Yeah. I think people are very reactive just in general, and
Yeah.
especially with all the platform risk of being on OpenAI. People freak out very fast. Yeah, people would need to let them chill a little bit.
I know, it was funny. Ah,
My
but yeah.
toasty take would be I just bought a bunch of books from thriftbooks.com, which is like an online used bookstore, uh, which I always go in there and I always end up buying like 3 times as many books as I would because they're all like $5. Like I bought a bunch
Yeah,
of
yeah.
like $6 books. So that's my super spicy take. You should that's
Is what that you bought books cheap?
no, that thrift books is good.
Awesome. Yeah.
That's I only go on
Um,
like once a quarter and it's dangerous.
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I've never used it. That's awesome. Next week there's gonna be announcements from Microsoft and Bing team. We don't know really if they're gonna relate any longer to plugins, which was their initial thought. And blog
Yeah.
posts said that they're going to port over ChatGPT plugins to Copilot on Microsoft. Microsoft's Copilot is most popular on GitHub right now. It's very highly used there, but also they're rolling it out slowly but surely to all their enterprise users of Microsoft to have Copilot in Word and PowerPoint and things like that. And there were talks in public blog posts about how they're going to implement plugins, but with this transition to to GPTs, it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out on Tuesday. I'm very interested.
Yeah, me too.
So yeah, yeah,
There'll be plenty more to talk about, that's for sure.
that's for sure. Yes, awesome, cool. All right, buddy. I'll see you next week. No, thanks to Josiah Soren for the tunes, and yeah, we'll see you here next week.
All right, sounds good.
Awesome. All right, ciao.